Hello, everyone. Back again. So it was very, very nice being the other side and being a speaker on that XConnect sponsor session. And I'd just like to introduce now another analyst session. And by the way, our analyst presentations during MEF Connects Wholesale are being kindly sponsored by NetNumber Global Data Services. So thank you very much, NetNumber, for your presence in the show as well. It was never actually planned like this, but it's just amazing how it actually fell, where we had this conversation with Simeon from Adaptive Mobile Security and Adaptive Mobile Security, Jason from Cisco IMI Mobile, myself and Tim Ward from XConnect about AIT. And we now have an analyst's take on AIT. I'm pleased to introduce Sam Barker to the show. Sam, hi.
Hi, James. How are you?
Fine. Really, really good. Good to have you. So a couple of years ago, we were actually doing a very, very similar thing because you were the first analyst company, Juniper Research, to talk about the whole area of A2P flash calling. And we covered that in a previous session, the authentication and verification session as well. But A2P flash calling, it's safe to say, is very much an issue, and I know we will be talking about that on other webinars in the next few weeks ourselves, but we're talking about AIT here. So hopefully the previous session set up everything for you very, very nicely, and thank you for joining us. So Sam, you'd like to introduce yourself and your company, Juniper Research.
Yes, I represent Juniper Research. We're a digital analyst house focusing on different markets, including telecommunications and messaging and different areas of fraud. And we've been around for 20 years covering the telco market for the same period.
Fantastic. Lovely to have you as a MEF member as well. So thank you for joining the MEF community. And take it away. It'll be really interesting to see your take on AIT and what we can do to fix this real problem. It most definitely isn't just a storm in a teacup, as we say here in the UK.
Yeah. So, yes, today I'm going to be talking about, give you a quick overview of where we are with business messaging at the moment, and I'll be doing a bit more of a deep dive into AIT, or artificially inflated traffic. So, looking at what it's looking like at the moment, we're in an interesting position. 2023 has seen a bit of disruption to the status quo, so to speak. Over the last few years, average annual growth has been 10% of traffic. As was previously discussed in the other session. You're looking at how authentication plays a key role in this A2P SMS market. SMS obviously is a very familiar area or a familiar technology for many enterprises looking to go out and authenticate their users or authenticate traffic. But there are some competing technologies out there that we'll go through in a minute. And what we're seeing, especially over the last 3 to 6 months, has been the pricing of wholesale messaging. It's fluctuating, in some instances rising quite quickly. We do know that obviously SMS is a very important technology, so quite a lot of this cost has been absorbed, but this is having an impact on certain messaging channels. I've picked out 3 instances here: grey root messaging, which we're all familiar with, AIT and AGT, which we'll dive deeper into, and obviously SMS trashing, which we'll also touch upon as well. So these are areas of fraud that are part of the contribution to some of the price rises. So what we're expecting is, despite all these price rises, there's still going to be an increase in demand for A2P SMS messaging moving forward. We're seeing a slight decline in this growth, but we expect that to be down to these price rises, which we anticipate to slow down and essentially return the market back to normal. So just to have a quick look at the importance of authentication for operators. So from our point of view, we anticipate that around 50 to 55% of all A2P SMS business messaging traffic is going to be attributable to this one-time passwords and multi-factor authentication use cases. And this is going to equate to 1.7 trillion messages in a year, or 4.5 billion messages a day. The other use cases obviously are areas such as notifications, delivery notifications, areas such as that. But the fact that authentication makes up the majority of text messages highlights how it's an important channel. We mentioned previously in the other conversation that SMS is ubiquitous, and I couldn't agree more. The idea that regardless of what sort of phone they have, what network they're on, whether they have a reliable internet connection, if they have a phone number, they have access to SMS, and that's ideal for enterprises to authenticate users. But touching back onto the fraud, what we're seeing is AGT, AIT is rising. I'll go through the process in a minute, but operators are in a position right now where they need to protect the quality of their networks against this type of fraud, and that includes aggregators and other stakeholders within the market. On the right there, as you can see, just some overview of some of the current types of, or more established types of fraud that we're seeing over messaging channels. We're seeing that the vendors such as firewall vendors are coming in and tackling these areas, but AGT and AIT is something new. There's a lot of tactics that are being used at the moment. There's never going to be a one-size-fits-all approach. And what we want to see is more and more of the vendors and the operators collaborating to make sure that these emerging types of fraud can be tackled. What I'll do now is I will very quickly take everybody through an example of how AIT works. So first of all, the enterprise will work with the CPaaS vendor or messaging platform to request authentication traffic, or they may directly go to the network operators. Obviously, the CPaaS vendor is then sending out an SMS through its channel, through the aggregators, to the intended network operator, who will terminate it with the mobile subscriber. Then what you'll see is that the network operators will then, the CPaaS vendor, will pay the aggregators, the enterprise will pay the platforms, so the aggregators paying the network operators. So it's a value chain essentially. But with AIT, it breaks down because the enterprise is not part of this value chain. The enterprise is not the one requesting new traffic. There is no new user to authenticate. So what you're seeing is enterprises and CPaaS vendors paying other stakeholders for traffic that wasn't needed. They're authenticating users that don't exist. It's artificially inflated. Obviously, this is costing operators and enterprises more and more money. The more and more users that are sent out, and the aggregators are the ones that are benefiting by taking this traffic that isn't needed. So there are fraudulent players within this ecosystem, within this value chain, that are raising the traffic, the artificially inflated traffic, to the point where it's not needed. It's costing enterprises billions and billions, this year to essentially send out traffic that isn't needed. So just a quick overview of quantifying it. So Juniper Research as an analyst house, we have been working with many of the vendors, the firewall vendors, messaging platforms to implement a methodology that allows us to make a good estimation of how much of this traffic is being sent out unnecessarily, and how much essentially how much wasted spend enterprises are paying. It's very clearly a growing market. This is an estimation for the end of the year, but what you can see on the graph to the right is that is essentially a huge jump from 4.6 billion to nearly 8.5 billion this year. I would like to sort of preface that growth by saying some of that contribution to that not is just the growth of AIT, but obviously price rises in traffic. We're seeing more vendors or operators starting to charge messaging traffic based on use case. Obviously, authentication traffic, MFA and 2FA, are the biggest use cases, the most important use cases, you can consider them mission critical, so they are charging higher prices. So that will contribute, but obviously there is a huge growth in the amount of traffic itself. An 80% increase we're anticipating by the end of this year. We are seeing more and more vendors as well launching platforms that operators can use to identify and mitigate this traffic, or expansions of current platforms, current SMS vendors. So it's still a problem. I mean, it's very evident looking at the growth. It's nearly doubling within a single year, and 8.5 billion wasted spend, given a total market value that's in the tens of the billions, is a large proportion of the revenue that's actually operators enterprises are spending. And enterprises are going to realise that. They're going to realise that there's a lot of traffic being sent out that is not worthwhile. It's wasted spend essentially for them. And the biggest issue for that is that they will then, these enterprises are going to start exploring other areas. As James mentioned in the previous session, ubiquity is the only thing that SMS has. It's the last technology that we're going to have that is truly ubiquitous for the authentication channels, and operators need to promote that when looking for onboarding enterprises for SMS. But just very quickly, before I go into just some alternative channels, very briefly, I just want to talk about where we are with MFA right now, with two-factor authentication. Not only is it ubiquitous, but also provides the most familiarity for enterprises. SMS has been used for authentication for a number of years now, many years. Enterprises are familiar with it. They know that it's a high message termination rate, almost guaranteed essentially. And obviously from the user's point of view, there's low friction. So there is going to be, this shift in demand. I think it's an exploratory stage right now. If you just look to the right, you can see two-factor, again, multi-factor authentication. SMS plays a role within that. It's what you know, who you know, and where you are type of authentication, which is the standard practice. SMS is fills that purpose for who you are and what you have. You see more and more consumers as well moving towards online platforms to subscription-based services. That does mean that there's going to be more demand for traffic, and we're at an inflection point in the market at the moment. What we're seeing is more and more enterprises having to request this information, and as they request more and more traffic, do they go down the SMS route, or are they going to explore other options? So I'll just very quickly go through a few of these right now. So one that was very mentioned before, flash calling. I mean, if we go back a year, flash calling was in a position where operators weren't sure on whether the traffic that they were handling was flash calling or whether it was just a normal P2P voice channel. So what we're seeing with flash calling is that whether they monetize, whether they block it, because this is traffic that would have gone over ATP SMS, which is obviously monetizable. But with flash calling, if they don't have the practices in place to detect it, what you're going to see is enterprise going for the more cost-effective, essentially free option of flash calling. Again, this one is well within the wheelhouse of operators. They are able to control the monetization aspect of it. It is over over telecommunications networks. So it's more a decision of whether you block or monetize. Another one very quickly is, I'll put this on there, is device-based biometric authentication, which is the process of having the ability to, the list down below, using things like facial recognition, fingerprints, voice recognition to authenticate a user. Now, the issue with this is, one, it is outside of the wheelhouse of operators. It is device-based. But secondly, from an operator's point of view, there are many instances where device-based authentication, biometric authentication, is not ubiquitous in the same sense that SMS is. Additionally, there are, we talked about it before, regulations where you do need to make sure that a user is being authenticated in the correct manner, and with the wide range of different technologies out there, there's no standard to ensure that the user is definitely going to be authenticated in the right way. Number verify very, very quickly. I would like to expand this more to just, general APIs. In the general telecommunications market, APIs need to play a bigger role. It's well within the operator's wheelhouse for authentication. They will be the ones that control the cost for APIs in a similar fashion that they control the gateways and the API calls over SMSC and SMSF. Right now, number verify is a very similar progression. Just the user will not receive a text message; the number will be verified on the SIM. And this is what I'd probably consider the most threatening to the SMS market at the moment. So OTT channels, we've already seen huge growth in what OTT apps are offering in terms of the business messaging market. We're seeing more and more of these OTT apps launching services that are similar to A2P SMS authentication in that they send out a one-time password, 2FA, MFA to a user. Now, what's interesting about the OTT market is it's incredibly regionally fragmented, ubiquitous. It's not got the same ubiquity as SMS, which is very, very important because you need that message guarantee. So what we expect here at Juniper Research is those larger enterprises that operate on an international scale are the ones that are going to be more inclined to remain with SMS. SMS is ubiquitous. If there's a large international company that's working in multiple countries, there's no guarantee that, say, for example, WhatsApp or Viber or WeChat is going to be popular in each single one. We do have CPaaS platforms out there that manage that, the orchestration of messages, but from the point of view of SMS, the pricing of SMS, despite rising, in many instances is still below that of what companies like WhatsApp offer. We expect that to be more for international vendors, international enterprises to focus more on the SMS. However, when you look at the regional level for these sorts of devices, these sorts of use cases, when you look at Brazil, for example, which has a very high penetration of WhatsApp and other countries as well, what you can see is these user bases of what an enterprise has and what the WhatsApp, what an OTT channel has such a large overlap that many of the enterprises are going to be more inclined to start using OTT channels, not just for authentication, but for marketing campaigns and customer interactions in general, because it has that rich media element, which obviously SMS doesn't. So it's all about fending off the OTT channels in terms of looking for ubiquity and making sure that these enterprises know that SMS is a well-tested, familiar channel that provides more benefits for authentication than SMS does at present. Just very quickly go through the next two. Text to speech is very niche. We have many instances where you might have an individual with visual impairment that needs the speech. And the last one I'll just very quickly run through as well is OTP voice. It's an option that's again offered sometimes to the visually impaired as well as to other people that may not have a mobile device as well. So there are instances where SMS is not just the channel; it is by far the biggest channel. From Juniper Research's data, well over 90% of authentication traffic over telecommunications networks, which we do include OTT in, will be through SMS. Over the next 5 years. And just quickly touching back on artificially inflated traffic, as I said previously, it is the most prominent threat to A2P business messaging at the moment, in my opinion, or fraud, the most prominent method of fraud. We're going to see enterprises moving towards, or at least exploring other options as SMS prices rise. It's on the operators to ensure that their messaging channels are as clean as possible. Essentially, that means making sure that the aggregators are not in a position where they are committing this type of fraud, as well as message trashing or SMS trashing, which we'll very quickly go through in a second. And it'd be the enterprises, interestingly, with the largest user bases that are most, prone to fraud, to AIT fraud. And this is because not only do they obviously have the biggest amount of users, but they're the ones that are more inclined to not only authenticate users when they first join the service, but look at things like logins for new devices or forgotten passwords, or in the banking sector, for example, banking transactions. That's not just about the initial user login. And as previously mentioned, it's interesting because these are the types of enterprises that are going to remain on SMS, and they're also the ones that are the most open to AIT fraud at the moment. Now, the good news is that they're the ones that are most likely to sort of invest in their own third-party solutions to look into how their traffic looks against new users or against what they'd expect, because obviously from their point of view, having a large number of users with a large number of use cases, they're the ones that are going to be spending the most, and they're the most prone to artificially inflated traffic. So to highlight the quality of networks is key. It's what enterprises need to do. Now, in speaking to the vendors that are offering these services, there is a largely simple solution, or a largely simple element where you are comparing the traffic against what you'd expect, essentially. So what we're looking for is if there are 100 million new users in a given period, you'd expect around 100 million new messages to be sent out, or to be automatically generated by an enterprise platform. So if they're looking and they're seeing 150 million, then they know at some point that the networks that they're using are probably impacted by AIT or SMS trashing, which is an issue that many enterprises are seeing at the moment. We saw it with Twitter around a year ago now, where he was talking about, Elon Musk, sorry, was talking about how much money, which I think the figure was 60 million, but that's a drop in the ocean compared to the 8 billion that we're anticipating right now. That's just because Twitter, or as now it's called X, is just one enterprise out of many that use it. So yeah, it will be a case of comparing new user numbers versus what the traffic is that's sent out. Just last slide, I'm just going to very quickly talk about the impact of SMS trashing. SMS trashing is very similar than artificially inflated traffic in that it is generated by CPaaS platforms, by enterprises. However, it is normally legitimate. However, this is mission critical, messages traffic that does need to be terminated. If the user doesn't receive the one-time password or the MFA, then they're going to request it again, and that's an additional cost to the enterprise. And it's the same area of cleaning up a network for operators, for aggregators, making sure that their network is as clean as possible. And that means auditing aggregators, seeing where messages are not being terminated, and refusing to send traffic through those aggregators in the future. There are two very different types of fraud, AIT and message trashing, but the solutions are interestingly the same, in that cleaning up the traffic and cleaning up the networks increases the value of SMS, A2P SMS to enterprises. It retains its position as a market leader with all the authentication traffic and channels that are out there, and will provide more confidence amongst enterprises, in the channel moving forward.
Thank you very much. A very, very comprehensive presentation there. So we were talking about the impact of this type of fraud, and it would be billions. And if you look at various industry analysts, various companies coming up with a figure of, say, 50, 60 billion, something like that, dollars for A2P SMS, you're coming with your figure of 8. Let's say conservative, let's say 20% of the revenues of A2P SMS.
Yeah,
AIT.
exactly. It's I mean,
huge. That's huge.
Absolutely massive. It's interesting in that operators are obviously still benefiting from it. They probably were seeing increases in their revenue, increases in traffic. It's only when the enterprises were the ones who were, reaching out saying, well, we had 100 million new users, but we had to send out 150 million requests. Did this become sort of an issue? So yeah, it's certainly something that...
And that's the problem, Sam. It's the enterprises left literally nursing the headache of that massive bill. So
Absolutely.
from the operator perspective is going great. We've got this extra revenue. The aggregator perspective as well, great. Potentially, we've got this extra revenue, and it's up to the poor enterprise. And as we heard from a previous panel, actually the authentication panel, some people are mentioning as well, even small businesses are impacted by this.
Absolutely.
As well.
Absolutely.
And you can imagine if you and I had our research business, we're members of, we've got Juniper Research, we're members of MEF. We think, let's use SMS to communicate with our customers. And then we end up, as Juniper Research, being impacted by this, and rather expecting a £500 monthly bill for SMS, we get a £50,000 bill. Where do you start fighting that?
I mean,
it's
exactly.
A tough one.
It's interesting. I would like to just very quickly liken it to moving out of the wheelhouse of telco to digital advertising, because digital advertising fraud is obviously huge.
It's far bigger than anything telco fraud. Yeah.
But if you liken the advertisers to the enterprises and the ad networks to the operators now, ad networks were getting revenue and it was fine. It was only when the advertiser said, well, we're spending a lot of money here and we're not getting much back, did the advertisers actually have to kick into gear. And that's what we're going to see with operators. We are seeing it with operators now. You're seeing many different solutions come out there specifically targeted at this type of fraud, because it's so pervasive and so,
This is the thing, the operators don't need to rack their brains, come up with something themselves. There are loads of fantastic companies out there with some great solutions. We've got one coming up next on the next panel, Open Mind Networks, and many other MEF members as well can contribute. I know you've done some work with Vox Solutions as well. You did a very, very nice report with them on A2P Flash and others as well. So there are plenty. And it's all about collaborating. Don't rack your brains. Reach out to the community and use what's out there and just get something implemented fast.
Absolutely, yes.
Lovely. Sam, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate your input. That was another of our analyst presentations, one of 6 we have over the next 2 days. And thank you to NetNumber Global Data Services for sponsoring our analyst presentation. So, Sam, lovely to see you with us, and see you at another show soon. I may see you, I think, next week in Croatia probably as well at WAS.
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, all the best. Bye.
Cheers, James. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.